Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching how to make a classic turtleneck, Raglan style. Timeless designs are timeless for a reason, so we kept with the classic theme and used the herringbone stitch. Gave it a luscious turtleneck, and because nothing says classic like a variegated yarn, so we chose that too. Speaking of, you chose to watch this video, so thanks for watching. We have hundreds of modern crochet patterns with new patterns on the way, so please consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 100 grams of yarn, and that's 250 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5.5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you've ever met a celebrity in person, and if so, who. For me, I've been in the vicinity of a couple celebrities, but never officially met anyone. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 2 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, and herringbone double crochet. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we are all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 5.5mm hook, and we're going to start off by making a chain for our neckline. So we're going to start by making an odd number chain that reaches from mid-collarbone across our chest to mid-collarbone. I need a total of 4.5 inches or 12 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 15. And since we're doing a long chain, let me show you guys a trick that I have to make sure that our chain isn't twisted. Let's all start by making a chain 5. Once we have our chain 5, we're going to pull some slack and pull our hook through that loop. We're next going to insert our hook into that first chain that we made, and then insert that slack loop back onto our hook. And once we have that, we're going to pull, and we're going to continue to chain per usual. So since we just did a chain 5, I'm going to continue my chain for 10 more additional chains for, like I said, 15 chains. Now that I have my chain 15, we're going to chain 1 extra, and then we are going to insert our stitch marker into that chain. Next, we're going to make a chain that reaches from mid-collarbone up and over our shoulder to our back. And coincidentally, mine is another 4.5 inches or 12 centimeters, so I'm going to be making another chain of 15. And now that I have that chain, again, we are going to chain 1 extra and insert our stitch marker into there. From here, we're going to be working across our back panel, so we're going to make the same chain that we made when we started this piece off. So for the same amount of chains that we made from collarbone to collarbone, we're going to do the same. Mine was a total chain of 15, so I'm going to chain another 15. Now that I have that chain, we're going to chain 1 extra and insert a stitch marker into there as well. And then finish off this chain by making the same chain that we made that worked from our front panel up and over our shoulder to our back panel. So for me, that was a chain 15, so I'm going to do another chain 15 right here. And now that we have that chain, we are going to chain 1 extra again and insert our stitch marker into there. And now we're going to slip stitch it into that first chain that we made. So since our hook is already into that first chain, we're just going to pull our hook underneath that second loop on our hook, and that is it. Now, the measurement that I'm doing can fit a 21-inch head in circumference because the chain has a tiny amount of stretch to it due to the 5.5mm hook. But if you'd like a wider neckline or a smaller one, that is completely fine. Just do additional chains if you want it wider, or fewer chains if you want a little bit tighter to get the width that you need. We just want to make sure that it can definitely fit over your head. But do make sure that it's not too wide because we want a turtleneck worked off of this, and we don't want that neckline to be too wide either. But once we have this, we're now going to do our first herringbone stitch row. So let's all start with a chain 2 and flip our work. We have flipped our work, and we're now going to be putting one herringbone stitch into every stitch, working across our front panel first. So making sure that we're not working in the direction where that following stitch is our stitch marker stitch. To do a herringbone stitch, we're going to yarn over, and then find that first stitch from our previous row, which this is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook in through there, and pull through. When we have those 3 loops on our hook, we're going to pull that first loop underneath that second loop. So if you need to pull your work down just a little bit to make it a little bit easier, go ahead, but pull that first loop underneath the second, bring it through for 2 loops on our hook. And this is going to be a double crochet herringbone stitch. So we're going to yarn over, pull through just the first loop for a total of 2 loops on our hook again, and then yarn over, pull through 2. That is our first one finished. Let's do the following. Yarn over again, insert your hook in through that following chain, and pull through. Again, we're going to pull that first loop underneath our second loop for a total of 2 loops on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through the first loop, yarn over, pull through both loops. Let's do just one more. Yarn over, into that following chain, insert your hook, pull through. Pull the first loop underneath the second, yarn over, pull through the first, yarn over, pull through both. And continue doing this stitch until we reach our stitch marker. We've made our way down with our herringbone. We're now at our stitch marker, and we're going to do an increase of 3. So take out your stitch marker for now. We're going to need it again in a second. And all we're going to do is put 3 herringbone stitches into that following chain. So insert, pull through, pull the first under the second, pull through 1, pull through 2, and then 2 more of those into that same chain. There's my second. And there is my third. Now into that middle stitch that we just did, or the second one, insert your stitch marker back into the top of that stitch so we know where that middle stitch is. And we're going to continue to do this, making our way all the way around. So 1 herringbone stitch into every chain. Into that stitch marker chain, we're going to do an increase of 3, and then insert your stitch marker into that second stitch or the middle one. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around, and when we reach this last stitch marker stitch that we have, I will meet you back to connect everything together. We have made our way all the way around with our row 1, and now we're going to slip stitch it into that second chain that we made when we started this row. So together we're going to count 1, count 2. Into that second chain, insert your hook, pull through everything, and now it's going to pretty much be a repeat of what we just did. Now that our first row is finished, before we move on, try it on over your head just once more, because sometimes the first row can tighten or expand the base chain. If it's a little too tight, adjust your chain by adding more chains, or if it's too loose, adjust your chain by doing fewer. But mine is looking pretty good, so we're going to get started on our second row together. So let's all start with a chain 2 and flip our work. After every row, we are going to make sure that we're flipping our work to make sure that the slant for our herringbone stitch is different for every row. And we're going to put 1 herringbone stitch into every stitch until we reach our stitch marker, and luckily for us, our stitch marker is right here, and we just have 1 stitch in between. So insert into that following stitch with a herringbone. And then into that following stitch is our stitch marker stitch. So let's do our increase of 3. So into that following, there is my first herringbone. Again, there is my second herringbone stitch, and then into that same stitch, my third herringbone stitch. There we go. And don't forget to insert your stitch marker into that second stitch that we made for that increase, because that's going to be where we're always going to do our increase of 3. And continue putting 1 herringbone stitch into every stitch. Whenever you reach a stitch marker, do an increase of 3 and then insert your stitch marker into that second stitch that we made. Continue putting 1 herringbone stitch into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at our following stitch marker. We've made our way down to our following stitch marker. So let's take this out and do an increase together once more. So into that following stitch, there's my first herringbone. Into that same with our second herringbone stitch. And then into that same stitch with our third herringbone stitch. That is our increase of 3. Don't forget to insert your stitch marker into that second stitch, and then that's it. We're going to continue to repeat this row until these points that we have can touch underneath our underarm when we have it on. So we're going to be doing quite a few more rows, and I will meet you back when I have mine finished up, and then we can talk about how to do the sleeve and then the body. I am back with the first portion of my piece all finished up. I have a total of 12 rows, and this length is 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. And now from here, since these corners can reach right underneath my underarm and touch each other, we're now going to work on the body. So from where we're at, we should have slip stitched into that chain space the same way that we've been doing. We're going to chain 2, flip our work, and then do our herringbone double crochet in the direction that we need to be working in. We're still flipping our work, and then I'll meet you once we reach our following stitch marker. We have worked our way all the way up to our following stitch marker, and now what we're going to do is fold our piece in half, and then we're going to connect our corners together, forming our armhole, and then we're going to be able to work all the way around. So let's do another herringbone double crochet, but working in through both of the stitch marker stitches that we have. So we're going to be doing our herringbone double crochet stitch per usual. Yarn over, and what we're going to do is insert our hook into that following stitch, which should be our stitch marker stitch, and then also insert your hook into that next corner stitches stitch marker stitch as well. And from here we're going to yarn over and pull through both of those loops that we just inserted our hook into to get a total of 3 loops on our hook. And from here all we're going to do is pull the first loop underneath the second, pull through 1, pull through 2. So everything else was pretty much the same. We just inserted our hook into 2 separate stitches. And as you can see, our front and back panel are now connected, and this is our armhole. If you would like to try on your piece right now and make sure that this can fit over your arm, feel free to. Just make sure that your arm can fit here and it's not too tight around our underarm. But from here, we're now going to be working across the bottom of our other panel, and that's going to be per usual. So put 1 herringbone double crochet into every stitch, and I will meet you back at our following stitch marker just so we can connect those sides together as well. We have made our way across our panel, and now we are at our following stitch marker stitch. So just like how we did on this side, we're going to be connecting our front and back panel together. So let's get that started. So getting this started, we're going to yarn over. Insert your hook into that following stitch, which should be our stitch marker stitch. And then also insert your hook into that following stitch marker stitch, or that other corner that we have. And from here, we're going to yarn over and pull through the 2 loops that we just inserted our hook into. So yarn over, pull through 1 and 2 to get a total of 3 loops on our hook. And this is per usual. We're going to pull that first loop underneath our second, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, and then continue working our way down with our herringbone stitch. We are back, and our first body row is complete. And that first body row, as a reminder, is just the row that works all the way around, that connects our corners, creating our armholes and our body. And from here, all we're going to do, right after we did our slip stitch into that second chain, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and then work our way all the way around with our herringbone stitch, slip stitch in that second chain 2, flip our work, and then repeat. The body portion isn't going to have any increases or decreases, so we're just going to continue on until we get the length of the top that we want. So you can make this cropped, long, or a dress. Once when we do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back so we can get started on the sleeves. I am back, and I have just finished the body portion. I now have a total of 29 rows. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now we can get started on the cuff for our sleeve. So when it comes to doing our sleeve, we are actually all done. What we're going to do is just do a slip stitch cuff just to cinch it a little bit. So let's all start by inserting our hook into the stitch that we have that connected our front and back panel. So taking a look at our sleeve, if we didn't take out our stitch markers, this is going to be a little bit easier for us. But all we're going to do is find the bottom of that herringbone stitch that we did that connected both the front and the back panel. As you can see, my stitch markers are still in here, and it's just going to be that one stitch that connects them. And it's not going to be the top of a stitch, it's actually going to be the bottom. What we're going to do is insert our hook into the bottom of that stitch, insert our yarn onto our hook, and now we can get started on our cuff. So pull through and start by making a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. I'd like for mine to be about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 4. Now that we have our chain, we're going to slip stitch all the way down our chain. So block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert, and when we have those 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both of those loops. Again, insert your hook into that following chain, yarn over, and gently pull through both loops, and continue putting 1 slip stitch into every chain, remembering not to tug too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row might be a little too tight to work into. Now that we put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're going to connect it into the base. So connecting it into the base, we want to make sure that we're not connecting it into the stitch that the bottom of that herringbone stitch is worked into. So as you guys can see, this is my following stitch that I have, but it is taken up by that herringbone stitch. So we're just going to skip that stitch and then into that following stitch, insert with a slip stitch to connect row 1. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect it. Let's do it again. To work our way up to the following row, we're going to insert our hook into that following stitch into the base with a slip stitch. Still doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect it and flip our work. And now from here, we're going to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch to get some really nice ribbing. So find the last stitch from our previous row and insert into that back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us. And again, gently pull through everything. Again, into that next stitch's back loop, insert, and pull through everything. Continue putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of our row 2, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and continue putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. And now that we are back at the base, our row 3 is pretty much finished. We just need to connect it to get started on the following row. So into that next stitch into the base, slip stitch into there to connect our row 3. And then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And then that's it. Continue on with our back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, and I will meet you back when we don't have any more stitches left to seam it together. We've made our way all the way around with our slip stitch rows, and now we're going to seam everything together. And this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out. We're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We're going to pull through and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now from here, we're going to find that first available stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. And then we're going to find that next stitch into the back panel and insert only into that back loop. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Again, insert your hook into that next stitch into the front panel's front loop, next stitch into the back panel's back loop, and pull through all 3. And we're going to continue this until we don't have any more stitches left. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So now that both of our cuffs are all finished up, we're now going to do a slip stitch turtleneck. So making sure that our work is slipped right side out and right side up, we are going to insert our hook into any one of the stitches that we have along the neckline. Next, we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook and pull through. And now we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our turtleneck to be, keeping in mind that we will fold it in half as well. I'd like for my turtleneck to be just 6 inches or 15 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 25. And now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then slip stitch all the way down. So starting with that second chain from our hook, insert into that chain, pull through everything with a slip stitch and put one slip stitch into every chain. Now that we've put one slip stitch into every chain, we're going to connect it into the base. And it's going to be connected the same way that our cuffs are, so let's just do the first one together. We're going to find that next available stitch into the base and slip stitch into there to connect our row 1. Then we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base to work our way up to the following row, flip our work, and then put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then that's it. At the end of the row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and continue putting one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, connecting it into the base the same way that we just did, until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you back to seam it together. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches into the base to work into, so now we're going to do our outside loop slip stitch seam. So let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out, and then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. From here, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and this is going to be the same seam as our cuff, so let's just do the first one. Insert your hook into that first stitch into the front panel, and insert only into that front loop. Into the next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop, then yarn over, pull through all 3, and then that's it. Continue on with our seam until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. And now that our turtleneck is seamed, we are all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!